Every government organization has hidden information because of the nature of their work. When you have a lot of power or responsibility, you're likely to learn things that should be kept confidential. Lately, I've been telling myself this idea over and over. Imagine I know something risky. Should I tell others about it, or is it my duty to keep it a secret? Today, we will hear directly from park rangers about what they witnessed in Glacier National Park that will leave you speechless. Case 1. It was late September, and the nights in Glacier National Park were getting cold. There were fewer tourists around, and I, the ranger responsible for night patrol, actually enjoyed being alone in the park during this time. Some might find it a bit spooky, but I liked the quietness and the vastness of the park under the moonlight. It's a unique experience, just the natural sounds of Montana with no cars or other disturbances. On that particular night, the moon was exceptionally bright, lighting up the entire valley. The cliffs and trees looked like black and white pictures, and the stars were a bit blurry, creating a surreal atmosphere. I was driving my patrol truck along the Going to the Sun Road, an area that feels completely different after sunset. It can be risky, but that's part of the job. My responsibilities include keeping an eye on wildlife, so seeing a coyote on the outskirts or hearing an owl hooting from the dark woods was a common occurrence. Occasionally, I have to deal with people who are crowding campgrounds or going on moonlit hikes without proper preparation. That night, things felt strangely calm, like the quiet moment before something big happens. After driving around the area, I parked near Bowman Lake, a part of the park with isolated campsites that some adventurous campers are drawn to. I turned off the engine and sat there, just listening. All I could hear was the gentle rustle of the wind, the distant waves crashing, and occasional rustling in the woods. Probably some nocturnal animal going about its business. As I was about to report that everything was clear, something didn't feel right. First, there was this strange smell, earthy and somewhat rotten. My initial thought was a dead animal, which is common in the wilderness. However, this smell made me uneasy, creating a dense feeling in my gut. Then came the sounds, a soft shuffling in the underbrush, like the quiet footsteps of something not quite human. This was followed by a noise that really unnerved me. It was a laugh, or maybe a cackle, unlike anything I've heard in all my years patrolling these woods. It was eerie, a cold laugh cutting through the silence of the night. I grabbed my flashlight and sidearm, pointing them into the pitch-black woods, but nothing showed up in the beam of light. The forest went dead silent. It felt like time stood still for a moment, and the silence was almost as loud as that strange laugh. Every instinct in my body urged me to leave, to return to the comfort of the crowd, but I'm a ranger, and this is my job, so I had to investigate. I kept walking further into the woods, curious about the source of that eerie laughter. Thus, I ventured deeper into Glacier National Park beneath the ghostly moonlight. With each step, I sensed that someone or something was watching me. Then, I heard it, a familiar voice calling my name. It was Jim, my partner ranger on the east side of the park. But something felt off. His voice was strange, almost like a whisper, both distant and close simultaneously. I froze, squinting into the darkness, my heart racing. The voice repeated, so eerily resembling Jim's, and this time it came from behind me, closer. Fear took over. I stood up, shining my flashlight around, searching for anything. Another call, this time from the direction of the lake where I had initially been heading. I started panicking, trying to comprehend how I could hear Jim's voice from two places simultaneously. With trembling hands, I grabbed my radio, and against every gut feeling telling me otherwise, I began my slow journey toward the voice coming from the lake. Nothing made sense. Every small sound, every rustle of leaves or animal noise heightened my fear. As I approached the lake, my radio crackled to life, nearly giving me a heart attack. It was Jim's real voice, loud and clear from the east side checkpoint miles away, reporting all clear on his end. A knot tightened in my stomach as reality crashed down on me. If Jim is miles away, who or what is trying to lure me deeper into the woods? Terrified, I sprinted back to my truck as fast as I could, hopped in, and slammed the door shut. My heart pounded in my throat. Swiftly, I steered the truck back down the roadie I came, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease burning into the back of my head. Whatever it was still watching me. I knew it 100%. Later at the ranger station, Jim shared tales of old Native American legends, stories of creatures that could mimic voices, shapeshift, and control minds. He referred to it as a skinwalker. For the first time, I'm seriously considering the possibility. How else can I explain the almost supernatural events of that night? The national park now feels different. The solitude I used to crave now seems intimidating. I've seen a different side of nature, wild and maybe even dangerous. Every night patrol since then has been a battle with fear. Every rustle in the bushes, every flickering shadow feels like a prelude to another spine-chilling encounter. But as long as there are people in the park, somebody has to keep them safe. I guess the chilling encounter served as a raw reminder of this nerve-wracking aspect of the job. Nonetheless, I still love how wild and beautiful the park is. I've simply learned a greater respect for the mysterious forces lurking in the wilderness. Case 2. I grew up near Glacier National Park in the city of Kalispell, and with my brother I spent a lot of time in my childhood exploring the lakes, camping, and wandering through the forests. Kalispell was a small, tight-knit community, and people took pride in the national park, one of the first in the U.S. It boasted crystal-clear lakes and a well-preserved ecosystem that formed part of the crown of the continent. Even our grizzly bear population remained at historical levels, unlike the decline seen in many other parts of the country. In 2010, during a few weeks back in Kalispell, I received a call from my friend Joe, inviting me to join him on the Highline Trail hike. I was familiar with the trail from my childhood, and it was one of my mom's favorites. After parking, we took a shuttle car to the Going to the Sun Road and headed towards the Highline Trail. The trail, known for its challenging climb, offered breathtaking views of mountain ranges and forested valleys. During our hike, Joe became fixated on something in the distance, and when we looked through binoculars, we saw a dark figure on the trail. About 2 miles away, it resembled a gorilla, and as we observed, it moved in a peculiar way, occasionally putting its head down to the ground, as if sniffing or searching. Despite the distance, we could tell it was sizable. When it stood up on 2 legs and walked like a human, resembling a deformed gigantic dog with shaggy black fur and horrifying fangs, it left us utterly shocked. As it disappeared behind trees, we couldn't comprehend what we had witnessed. Alarmed, we decided to go back the way we came to warn others about the unusual sighting. When we reported it to a skeptical park ranger, he suggested it might have been a huge wolf, but our account of its bipedal movement led him to dismiss our experience. Regardless, Joe and I are firm in our belief that we saw something extraordinary. Case 3. I worked as a ranger at Glacier National Park back in the 80s. During one notably warm summer, we received numerous calls, ranging from trail injuries to animal encounters. There was even a case of a missing person who was fortunately found alive after a half-day search. However, one incident from that summer remains vivid in my memory, involving a young woman who entered the ranger station at the Apgar campground in the late afternoon. She appeared disoriented, bursting through the door, visibly out of breath, and with a look of deep fear on her face. I quickly ushered her to a seat and attempted to soothe her. Upon asking about what had happened, her initial statement was that she had seen the devil at the lake. Naturally, I dismissed this as nonsense, considering the possibility of intoxication or the need for assistance beyond my capabilities. However, as she gradually calmed down after having some coffee, she shared more of her story, which, if you can believe it, became even more bizarre. She recounted spending the morning hiking and decided to take a break near Lake McDonald just after noon. As she sat, enjoying the scenery and having a snack, she heard the unsettling noise of trees being disturbed to her left. The noise intensified, and she observed a dog's head emerging from the trees. In a matter of seconds, it reached the bushes near the lake and eventually emerged. To her shock, it was a massive and hideous dog-like creature walking on its hind legs. It strolled alongside the lake without glancing around, seemingly focused on its path. Throughout its presence, the young lady sat frozen, describing a state of paralysis due to fear. Once the creature disappeared, she hastily departed, not even pausing to retrieve her bag. Initially skeptical, I doubted the young lady's account, suspecting she might be influenced by drugs or a lack of oxygen. However, I later discovered that another ranger knew her, and she was a local from the town of Whitefish. Despite my reservations, the lady adamantly refused to return there. I called for another ranger to accompany her to her car. While retrieving her bag from the lakeside, about 50 yards away, I noticed peculiar tracks in the soft mud beside the water, large, five-toed prints that left me puzzled. My curiosity led me to investigate further, finding the point where it emerged from the bushes. To my surprise, I found black substance on the branches where it passed through, emitting a foul smell unlike anything from known animals. What struck me as odd was the height of its fur, reaching the level of my head off the ground. Unusual for the creatures I typically encountered. Conversations with fellow rangers revealed that such sightings occurred annually in the park, dismissed by most as pranks or misidentifications. However, the evidence I found by the lake suggested that the lady's fear was grounded in a genuine encounter with something unknown. When my father retired and relocated to South Carolina, I would go see him and my mother once or twice a year if I could. But it's a long way from my home in Maryland, and it was autumn that year, so I hadn't seen them in over a year. My father and I like spending time outside, so we decided to visit Glacier National Park to see the magnificent colors and scenery at that time of year. My dad was in his 60s, but strong as a bull, and he was always pushing himself physically. He had these old kayaks in the garage that we tied on top of the car. We got out on the water pretty early that morning, and even though it was an overcast day, the rain was holding off, and there was little to no wind. My father once took off ahead of me, taunting me with the challenge of keeping up with him. But I was taking it easy, simply enjoying the sights and sounds of the forest in the autumn. I followed him through some tiny channels, and when I rounded the next bend when the water opened up again, I noticed my father sitting in his kayak, not paddling but sitting quiet and gazing into the trees on the other bank. He noticed me come around the corner and motioned for me to be silent and quiet. I gently paddled towards my dad, and he quietly said there was something big near the trees. At first, I couldn't see anything, but after a while, I noticed a creature that seemed like a deer. As I kept watching, I started thinking, what kind of animal is that? It looked like a really big dog, but it was moving around, sometimes on 2 legs, then on 4, and back to 2. It didn't seem to have a preference. Because it kept moving, I couldn't see its head clearly, but I noticed a scary-looking snout and huge orange eyes visible through the trees. At one moment, it stopped and turned its eyes towards us. We sat there, perfectly still, thinking it might not have seen us in the middle of the water. Even if it did, it didn't do anything, and moved off into the forest. After a minute, my dad and I didn't say much, but out of curiosity, we slowly paddled after it, trying to be quiet. In my mind, I half thought that our small paddles wouldn't be much help if it decided to come into the water, because it looked heavy and moved like a natural hunter. In the end, it didn't matter, because as it went along the bank, it got faster and faster until it became a dark shape in the distance. Even if we paddled as fast as we could, there was no way we could catch up. Afterward, my dad told me he was terrified the whole time. He had heard stories about a creature like that from the locals, but hadn't believed them until then. I was glad he shared that because I think the only reason I didn't completely lose my composure was having him there. And I didn't want to look scared in front of my old man. That's all for today's video. Hit the like button and subscribe for more.